Yeah.
All right. Hi, everyone. This is Bonnie Bird, and I'm here with Global Expressions of All Light Language, and we're here to have a conversation about global grid work. And these two ladies, Susan Mulhern and Wendy Napolitano, are both ladies. Well, it's a larger group than the two, but tonight's the two that should come tonight. And so they're going to talk to us about what grid work is, some of the work that they've done, and just explain to us a little more because they're right in the thick of it. So we really want to, we're really excited about knowing exactly how it works and what they do. So Wendy, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Bonnie. I appreciate it. So I'm Wendy Napolitano, and you see that I have Archangel Raziel tacked in after my name, and that's because my higher self is Archangel Raziel. So I'm a quantum healer, and I do regression work. I work with light language. I read it. I write it. I'm a channeler. And so, in some variations thereof and therein. So I find it interesting that as you start working in developing your gifts, that you start to get more and more. And so that's just kind of how it's been. I've had my gifts since I was a child. My first time that I experienced something, I was 6 years old, and my clairaudience went off, and I heard a man say loudly to me, "Where is your brother?" And he's a year and a half younger than me. So he was 4.5 at the time, playing hide and seek, and was several miles away from our house because he's a fast runner as a kid. And he ran and hid in a box and got trapped. And after I heard that, I just felt this energy. So I've been able to feel energy ever since then. And then I've had just various things happen throughout my life. So it's been an interesting process. As far as what the grid work is, how that came about is I, as a child, not really understanding what I knew about it, traveled. My dad was in the service, so as an Air Force brat, we did a lot of like all across the US and abroad internationally. So going to Hawaii, Guam, the Philippines, and Japan. And I pretty much was that kid who, like, never put her shoes on. So I was doing work before I knew I was doing work. But to elaborate on that a little further, the grid work is really, it's connecting in with the ley lines. It's working to send your energy down, bring your light in, and connect. And as you're doing that, you're connecting in and sending out your light energy throughout the planet. And so as we've been traveling, after Susan and I met, we've been traveling to various locations. And our first call a few years ago was when I was called to do the conference for the Lemurian Call to Action. And we did that in Mount Shasta. And that was in 2021. So
It
when
doesn't
I
seem like that
had,
long ago. It
right?
seems
It
like you
just
just
like,
did that.
it seems
Well,
like a blink
let's
of
let
a
Susan
blink of an
introduce
eye. But
herself.
yeah,
Let's
Susan, go ahead and
before we get
introduce
into
yourself.
everything, let's let Susan introduce
Perfect.
herself. Go
All
ahead,
right.
Susan.
Yes, my name is Susan Mulhern, and I originally started as a Reiki healer, originally with the Sui Reiki, and then I think a year later I started with Kundalini Reiki um, in my 20s, so it was about 25 plus years ago, about 25 years ago. And just doing it with family and friends and myself, and so not professionally, but so yeah, so I developed that sensitivity to energy, kind of like Wendy has talked about, and over the years, like if I've gone into homes where there was a haunting, I went into a friend's home, I remember, that had a haunting there, and then I also went to another haunted house. But I could feel I've never been had any fear around spiritual connections or ghosts or anything. And going into a house where I knew there were spirits, I could feel the difference, right? And I from 2009 till 2019, I was part of a local intuitive practice circle, and we met twice a month for like 2 hours, for 2 nights a month, and we would practice more of our psychic mediumship, and healing gifts, doing readings for each other, doing healings on each other, that sort of thing. And during that time, I did like intro to psychic development. I took a couple mediumship classes, things of that nature. And so I was working on developing those gifts during that time. And then in 2019, I started this like accelerated awakening process, and where just one thing led to another. I know I kind of dropped out of my ego consciousness more into the heart and followed that inner guidance system. I kind of felt that shift, and I had been doing like a Course in Miracles and other work prior to that to kind of get to that point. And so it's kind of like the more I followed my heart step by step, I got led from one person to the next to the next. Like all these synchronicities started happening because I was just solely following my inner guidance, regardless of where it led me, regardless if I knew where it was taking me. And that's how it led me to my first channeling class in October, November, December of 2019. I took my first channeling class. And then I spent a year just more, I call it semi-automatic writing because it's more conscious channeling, is the type of channeling like Wendy and I do. And just journaling for myself on a daily or every other day basis. And occasionally I'd share my messages and things like that. And then about a year after that, I mean, in that year, I discovered a lot of things about myself through other channelers and connections, and connecting me with other people. And then a year later took a second channeling class, and that's when we created our global channeling practice group. Wendy wasn't part of that class, but she joined our group, and so ever since then, we have people from the U.S., Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Ireland, UK that are part of our group. And so basically, whoever's available, we'll get together once a week, usually on Thursday nights, and practice channeling, and we'll record it on Zoom, and then I'll edit the videos, and then Wendy and I, as part of this process of developing our channeling gifts, in January of last year of 2022, we started a YouTube channel together called Channeled Illuminations, and a Facebook page as well. And so I'll edit our practice videos and post it in both of those locations under Channeled Illuminations. And then Wendy and I started doing live channeling events in Zoom, called the Elemental Realm series. So we both connect to different elemental beings, like dragons, unicorns, the Dragonfly Collective, gnomes, brownies, and I think our next event will be with the mermaids, since we've started
Oh,
channeling them.
amazing.
But we both speak their light language, and we get some translation with our light language, when we connect to all sorts of different beings, galactic beings and nature beings, as we call them, instead of elemental. Um, but yeah, so it's just evolved over the last few years, into kind of where we are today. And then last year we started started as a guest channeler on a regular Saturday webinar through Hookalo on YouTube, and we'll be guest channeling on August 19th coming up here, talking about our travels as well, and doing some channeling. And we do private channeling sessions or healing sessions as well. And I also do some animal communication. That's something that's still developing, but I've done readings for that. What else? And we've had like telepathic experiences, not only Wendy and I, but with other people and stuff. So our telepathy's kind of developed as well. And
Yeah, quite a
it's been
bit.
an amazing journey. There's still more being revealed to us.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
like I'm a fractal of Archangel Metatron. So I've channeled him and other archangels. I'm also been told I'm part of Yeshua, Jesus's soul family. I have an aspect of Mary Magdalene. I have an aspect of the Egyptian goddess Mat. So and I've had lifetimes in Egypt, as Wendy has as well, as Isis priestesses. So we've done a lot of channeling with like the Egyptian gods and goddesses. And different galactic groups, the Arcturians, the Pleiadians, the Lyrans, the Syrians, the various collectives, the Galactic Dragon Collective, and yeah,
You know, it's
so
interesting. They like working with us because we're busy and because
Yeah.
they're trying to connect with us,
we're
and they
putting
kind of like
ourselves out
stand
there.
in line. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some of them are like, oh, we just like stopped in to connect because we could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start with like when you went to Mount Shasta, how did that go? And can you tell us a few stories of some of the work that you did over there? Whichever one of you want to pick that one up.
Yeah, so the first year when we went to Mount Shasta, I was doing a conference, so we had multiple people there doing sound healing, and then I was doing a talk on light language and talking about, I kind of did a clearing for everybody, working through their chakras. And then I did like language activations because I'm an activator. So I have a lot of keys and codes that I'm able to share with others. And so, because they had come to the conference, I went ahead and just kind of did a basic overall clearing. And a lot of people were coming to me saying, oh, I had blocks and I don't have those blocks anymore. And then after I did the activations for those that were attending, they a lot of the people who raised their hand have reached back out to me and said some of them were spontaneous, some were like immediate, like right afterwards doing light language. Some people were like an hour later, like out while they were hiking, light language showed up for them. And then one of my girlfriends, Gina, her husband Keith, he like raised his hand and he goes, yeah, he goes, all of a sudden I'm like speaking light language and I've never done that before. And I said to him, I said, Keith, I remember you sitting in the room raising your hand, do you remember that? And he's like, oh yeah, I forgot. so that was really funny how that worked out. But we went to Pluto's cave. That was like the last night that we had gone. We had a group of Aztec performers, and they came out and joined us. And so they were, doing drumming, and we were doing sacred ceremony almost, that entire trip. Almost every
And
day.
dancing, yeah,
And
native
yeah,
dancing,
and
but
we were
we also did the
dancing.
water ceremony where
Oh
we
yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
dunked in the lake. Yep.
So was some of your experiences with spirit as you did these ceremonies? I mean, did you have any special things happening to you? Some people will have visions or they'll have like the wind will pick up or an animal will show up. Did you have anything happen like that?
You want to
Well,
talk about the Arcturians
yeah. So
driving and on ship?
yeah, you can talk about the driving, and then I'll talk about like the what happened at Pluto's cave there.
Well, I'm talking about when you were driving from the airport. I wasn't with you at that time, but
For the first trip or the second.
well, you were driving with Marilee the first trip.
So for me, when I first drove into Mount Shasta, so we arrived to pick up our car out in Medford, Oregon, and so driving in, and the way that I transmute not light language, but the way I transmute energy is a lot of times I'm how you would just call me a transformer. So I take the high to the low and the low to the high. And so as soon as I don't know, I was maybe about 10 miles away from Mount Shasta, and then I kept like yawning this energy. So I was like doing all this clearing, and I was like, and I'm driving, and I was like, I must have been yawning for 20 minutes because this energy was moving and moving and moving through me. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? But because, when you're like really yawning, your eyes closed. And so I was like, and I was like,
You didn't drive it.
I forgot about that part. But
Oh.
but yeah, so then literally it was about 20 minutes, and then after we finally got, and now we're about 3 miles away from Mount Shasta now, we'd already driven past Weed, and I was like, I was like, I'm gonna have to pull over. Like, this is like too much. Like, it was just getting to be too much because I was like, I can't catch my breath. My eyes are closing. I'm trying to drive. And then all of a sudden it like mellowed out. And then it just kind of like, then my breathing was able to like get more normal. And that was, yeah, that was a very unique and surprising experience for me. I have had other energetic things that happened. While we were there, there was one thing that dinged another memory, that I had woken up at like, I don't know, like 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And I had had like this dream of, it was like a circle, and within this circle, like all this light language coding was coming in, but it was coming in like whoosh, 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 whoosh. But I could see that it was light language. And so it's almost like, you know, when you're in a meditation and you see that in your third eye. So it was like that. And so I saw all this, like it was like coming in, but it was like from every different angle. It didn't make sense. It wasn't like a, you know, it wasn't like a mandala, like regular geometry that was like everything was even and smooth. It was from like all like but it was all happening at one time. And I was like, what is happening? And so I just remember it being like very significant. Joan, who is not here with us, one thing that she had happened to her was while she was in her room, and she said again,
Yeah,
it was like
I was
morning,
sharing the room
yeah,
with
early
her.
morning hour. But go ahead and tell about that because you were like there
Yeah.
and that
So
experience happened.
yeah, I think it was the next morning after we arrived. Yeah, it was like 4 in the morning, and I was sleeping during this time. And Joan woke up for whatever reason, and she saw these lights, kind of like galactic ship lights on the ceiling of our room. Like she saw these lights, and she felt like waking me up, but she didn't. But so she had that experience, which was pretty wild. And then I know that morning, I think it was that morning when we had our opening ceremony, and yeah, Wendy, you were back in your room having this your own galactic experience, right? Of being taken
You
on
know, I
ship or
want to tell
something
you
to that
that
effect.
uh,
And but when we were, yeah, when they were the Aztec, you know, drummers, dancers, well, we were doing like kind of just the opening ceremony. There was like, was it vultures or hawk? I think it was hawks, like red-tailed hawks, I think, like circling right above us, like several of them,
Yeah,
just during the opening ceremony, and
there were like
then
around,
they
I want to say the
disappeared.
number 11.
Well, I
you
don't know
know,
about that, but
the same thing happened to my friend and I when
11.
we were at Mount Shasta in the hotel room, the lights like that in the bedroom, and it was just crazy. And I said, "Hey, should we take a picture?" And my friend Rochelle goes, "No, because it'll go away." So we're
oh,
just
I
sitting
have a
there
yeah,
watching people.
another thing to share is like for 2 months before we arrived, there was fires burning on the mountain and the surrounding areas. There was forest fires, and we heard from people that like lived in town that came to our conference, because there was like 40, 50 people that came to Wendy's conference. And actually Wendy got guided from her light team to do this conference. It was her inspiration, and then she brought in like three other people to help lead and be like the main presenters and everything. But anyways, so when we got there, I think it was that Saturday, it like rained, like heavy rain. Like I think the day after we arrived, I think. And luckily we had like Wendy was presenting, like she had mentioned, and other presenters were doing like, you know, crystal bowl sound healing and things like of that nature.
Yeah,
And so we
we
had
did a
indoor
shamanic drum
presenters.
journey at the time.
Yeah,
So that
so it
was,
worked
yeah.
out well that that's the day it rained. And then in the afternoon, we got to go up to the mountain, and that was the first day in like months that they had opened up the mountain for people to go up there, because and the skies had cleared, like no smoke in the air. It was beautiful blue sky. Like it just worked. It was all synchronistic. It worked out amazing.
You guys
Yeah,
have
we had
a
beautiful weather, everything. Yeah.
what's the name of your Facebook page? Because you have pictures and stuff on your page if they want to go check that
Yeah.
out.
So
We have a channeled illuminations page, but Wendy has, yeah,
but it's the
Lemurian
Lemurian
call to
Call to
action.
Action Facebook page that has a lot of photos from the event. And yeah, you can go out there and, you know, just search my name, go to the page, join it. And then just search on my name, Wendy J Napolitano. I use a middle initial because I think there's other Wendy Napolitanos out there in the world. But then also, like if you're looking for any of our like channeling stuff, then that's, channeled illuminations. And so there's YouTube, there's Facebook, and then I do have Instagram too, but that's under my, 5 Mystic Crystals. I think crystal I left off. I think I tried to shorten it and just called it 5 Mystic Skulls. But because I stopped using that, I haven't really been posting as much stuff to that. So either I need to rename it or, get back to that.
Yeah.
And we can
Yeah.
share our bios and information
Yeah. So we can share
after
it later.
this that
Oh,
you can share
definitely.
with
Yeah.
the
Oh, but
videos. Yeah.
When the video is
another,
posted, you guys can go ahead in the comments, put your bios and information in there. And that way
Sure.
everybody can find you, if they want a session or, they want to know more about grid work or
yeah, exactly.
We do both do private sessions for.
Right. But
Yeah.
so another interesting thing that had happened was when we were out at Pluto's cave, it was nighttime, and we now that time it was the fairies playing with us. We went out there and we didn't know the way to the cave, and so we had gone out at a different time than everybody else, and so we literally like were hiking up and around, and we
wandering through the desert
through the desert in the same circle. And I'm like, we have gone around this thing 3 times, you guys. I go,
and I think I saw a fairy ring while we were doing that.
And so I was like, yeah, that's totally a fairy ring, like the way the trees and everything were set up. And so then I was like, all right, let's just walk back to the car. We're going to start over. We get back to the car, and just as we get back to the car, there's like a ranger guy or something, and he's
that
like,
showed up.
You know where to go. He goes, I'll show you exactly. It's like, it's just up this path. And we're like, oh my God, are you serious right now? So they knew that we were frustrated and like done, and they were like, all right, we're going to bring you there. So then we went, and then at the cave,
the rest of the group was already there.
And so everybody was, whoever had their drums, they were doing drumming and then more singing, and but I think it was mostly drumming, and then there was sage going, just to kind of connect in with the energies and that. And so toward the end, we're like, all right, it's starting to get dark out. And then we wanted to be in the parking lot and kind of like looking up to see, like, are we going to get any connections? So it was dusk at the time. And I was like, oh, I think I want to get like some pictures. And I saw this one evergreen, and I felt like this evergreen was like calling me. And I was like, oh, I think I'll get it over there by the evergreen. And then you could see, because it was during the equinox, and I think there was a full moon going on at the same time, a fall full moon. And so I was like,
the fall equinox. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, you can see the moon, you can see Sirius. And I'm like, I want to, like, I'm get by this tree. And there were like these 3 tall rocks, like tall enough that you could step up on him. I wasn't like, I had to like, heft myself over. I could just stand up and like step on top of it. So I was like, I was trying to get a selfie. And then one of the girls steps up and she goes, oh, hey, do you want me to like get a picture of you, with like, while you're up on that rock? And I was like, yeah, that'd be awesome. So I'm standing on the rock, and I'm kind of like, got my hands up like this. And then she takes like 2 or 3 consecutive photos in a row. And in the second photo, there's this beam of light coming down on me, and there's no light source out there. If anybody's ever been out to Pluto Cave and has been at that parking lot, there's
it's like in the middle of the desert and nowhere.
Cool. So I was like, oh my gosh. So then, during channeling, I found out later that was the Arcturians, said they wanted that recognition, that light to literally. I was like, my husband's like, well, how come, why did they return you if they beamed you up? And I'm like, I don't know, I guess I still have stuff to do. But the thing that I remembered after I was taking that photo is I had my hands like in this kind of not quite a wide position, like a little off angle. And I remember like looking at my arm, like, you weren't there before. Like it was like it moved an inch or something, but I didn't move it, but I noticed it, my awareness to it. And I was like, that was weird. Like I thought it in my mind, but then when I looked at the photos, and I found out later that, they pulled me on ship. I'd been gone in meetings for weeks because there's no time. And so then they sent my consciousness back to write so I didn't lose anything. And I was like, okay, that's a lot.
Yeah. And so, you was in a slightly different position when you got back.
Yeah.
So,
That's confirmation. and then after that, when I got home, I remember like I felt literally like I was walking sideways, and then all of a sudden I felt this like this pain show up, like kind of in my ribs, but below my ribs, like in my hips or something. And all of a sudden it was like, ugh, like I literally like I got tugged into the ground, and I was like, whoa, what the heck was that? And so because I anchor in codes, literally the term anchoring has to do with anchoring, because you're a lot of people have seen themselves as, they're, the larger picture of like when you're doing yoga or any of those images, you'll see like the light coming up and above you, that stream of light. And so if you can imagine that light, has those people talk about when they're astral traveling, that they can see like the cords like are caught. And then a lot of times when I'm doing healing, there's always cords that like people have cord entanglements, because of multiple lives, or multiple lives that are like parallel lives, but they cross over at these weird intersections. So I have to clear all that stuff out for them, or help them clear it out, because they're doing the work. I'm guiding them, but my knowledge and my experience helps them to get there. So my energy bringing them up, and then kind of finding that in between spot so we can do that work. But then after I anchored in the codes, it was like I had gotten up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, and I was sitting there and my hands were on my lap, and I wasn't really thinking about that. And then all of a sudden I could see, it was like magic. I felt like I was Harry Potter for a minute, because those codes that all spun around coming in like a circle and like came to me, now they were coming out of like my finger, like my finger was a wand, and they were coming out of my hand. And I was like looking at my hand, like again, like you said, your friend was like, don't move, like they're gonna go away. I did the same thing. I was like, I can't move because this magic will be gone.
That is so cool. I mean,
yeah,
I think the more we get into doing our work, and the more spirit guides us to all these different places and things, the more magic we're going to see. And it's so exciting,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. It's just going to get more and more exciting.
Yeah, the
Don't realize.
synchronicities are showing up faster and faster
the
now.
Florida trip, we were supposed to go on a group trip to Florida, and the whole thing canceled, but we had all our plans already, Joan, Susan, and I, and we're like, I still feel like I want to go. And they're like, yeah, me too. So we did, we all went. And then one of the fun experiences that we had while we were there was that we were like out on the balcony, and we're like looking out at the ocean, and I'm not hearing any waves. They just look like lines. And I'm like, it's loud. Like usually you step out on the balcony, because we were literally like right there on the beach. And I was like, you can hear the waves. And I'm like, I don't hear any waves. And I was like, and then I was like looking at the water, and although it was dusky, I'm like, the water is not moving.
It was like
So
11 o'clock at night. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And you were out there with me, Susan, and you're like,
Well, Wendy, all three of us went out, and
but only two of us
but I had the same experience Wendy did, but Joan did not.
Joan didn't. It was still
Yeah,
like
so we
waves
both
moving and
separately
noise.
had this experience, and like 5 minutes went by and the waves started up again. But we both noticed like the waves were stopped, not moving, no sound, and we were both in our minds like, what's going on?
Trying to figure it
And
out.
then at some point, then we started hearing the waves and seeing the movement again. And so, yeah, after 5 minutes, like, I'm like, when we first came out here, did you notice this? Like Wendy and I and Joe were talking about it. Yeah, so it was interesting. Wendy and I had the same experience, but Joan did not. But then Wendy and Joan, they can see hydrolace, and you can kind of
Yeah.
explain what that is, but I can't see it
Yeah.
in the sky. So yeah.
What's
Yeah.
that, Wendy? What
So
is
hydrolace it's basically it's definitely third eye, but while you're looking, and I always say it like this, that it's like while you're daydreaming, and so you're not looking at anything, but you're just look like your eyes are open, and so you're just kind of like drifting, and you're not really blinking exactly, and you're just kind of like looking. And so when you're looking at the sky, what you see are like these little silver dots, and they're like all over the place, and they dot. Well, what's interesting is that a lot of like the camera apps have like where you can like make little sparkles show up.
Yeah.
It's like that, only they're not white, they're silver.
Yes. I've seen them.
and
Yeah.
you can see them all over it. It's hydrolase. So what you're really seeing is like these little silvery lines of the grid, showing you themselves, because the grid isn't just the ground. It's, it's everything, right? It's
Everything,
everything.
encompassing
So
everything. Yeah. That's so
yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I absolutely see that too. And then also people are starting to see like these little sparks of light, like purple or blue or green. And that's your
Yeah, I've seen
macarba.
that
That,
before. Yeah.
that's your light body, your macarba trying to, you know, light everything
balance.
up and
I
get
was a
everything.
long time ago, I thought somebody said it was like, the different colors were related to like different archangels, but then I think when I took like intro to psychic development, like I saw some the one of the people psychics leading the class, I saw like a kind of a blue-green light off of her one of her shoulders, and I told her about it, and she's like, "Oh, that's my elemental guide." Like,
Yeah.
you can have a guide that's an elemental and they're a little shorter, I guess.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
Yeah.
so that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I did see a ship on that Florida trip as well. Like we were driving to the Ponce de Leon lighthouse in Daytona Beach, and we did like a Lemurian ceremony there, but on the drive there I saw light above the trees and then it like disappeared. So I'm like, hey, did did you see that? But yeah, so that was pretty cool. But
So tell us a little bit like your last trip in Ireland. What happened there, guys? Where do you begin?
So
what didn't happen?
I know, right? What didn't happen? So again, with the weather. So I know that I work with the elementals and I work with weather. Susan does as well. Joan does as well.
We can
So
manipulate the weather
yeah.
through
So
intention.
manipulating it and asking for rain, asking for dry. Sometimes here's what happens though. When you stop the rain, then it wants to come in. Like when it comes in like way more than like from when you stopped it. Or like say you weren't supposed to have, like if you, like when we stopped it and then I came back home, then it was like it poured. So it just poured where I was at. So because I had this delay, but I was like, oh my gosh. But I had dreams about that too. And then it just kind of showed up, just how I experienced it in my dream. But I'll get to that too. But so we ended up starting out in Scotland, started out there, and we went to Edinburgh or Edinburgh.
Eden,
I never
yeah,
know
it's
how to
like
say it right.
Edinburgh.
I wish I.
I thought someone there that lived there said like in a store said like Edinburgh, like Edinburgh
Edinburgh,
or
Mhm.
yeah,
like minus a
Braha.
few letters.
You can see either say
So
Edinburgh or Edinburgh. Yeah, like there's two ways.
yeah, so we went up to the castle, and on the way up, there's some guy in a kilt playing bagpipes, and so we're like listening to him on the way up to the castle, and then they tend to redirect us a lot, so we end up like, instead of going where we needed to go, it's like, oh, now we got to take this route. Now we got to do it that way. So sometimes I feel like they're like sending us to parts of town that we wouldn't necessarily have gone to otherwise. And so, but while we were at the castle, I mean, there was nothing significant really that happened. Just that we were like, oh, let's go find lunch. We couldn't get there, and then we ended up somewhere else. But we're walking around, and so we're like up and down these like steep, these steep hills to get there. And the walls were incredible, but I felt myself like connecting in really with so we're like sending like light, right? I don't know if people are familiar with working with the violet ray, but that's definitely, or the violet flame. That's definitely something that we were doing, and then of course working in with the golden crested energy. You pull that down, and then we're also at the same time like gifting crystals. So Mother Earth is kind enough to give us so many of these gorgeous crystals, and so what we do is we'll take those seed crystals, which are probably the little stones left over when people are cutting rocks or whatever, and they're like, oh, let's just throw this in a tumbler and we'll sell them.
Yeah, they're
But
very tiny, and we brought them with
yeah, they're
us
little.
to gift to the land. Yes,
Yeah,
Oh,
so
that
we
was
we
the
gift
nice.
them
different
back to
sites.
the fairies and the gnomes, and we got that information really pretty much from working with channeling and having conversations with the gnomes, the fairies, and the leprechauns, and the tree beings, the tree spirits, the water spirits. There's so many, right?
And
And they're
gifting
like
apples too.
apples.
Yep.
They like apples too, the energy of the apple. So we'll put our love energy into it, and then we'll set it down with the intention that it's a gift.
Oh,
And
nice.
we know that it's always appreciated, and usually when we do
And
it,
do
we'll
light
do
language
that
and
together. And
connect our energies. Yes. I'll
yeah,
work on
yeah.
that.
So, so then after that, we had a trip up to, the next day we went up to Inverness. And so we took a coach bus. And as you know, as we rode up to Inverness, it was, it had multiple stops along the way. But then once we hit Loch Ness, that's where we ended up taking a boat ride to the island where Iroquois. I think
On
that's how.
Loch Ness, yeah.
Yeah, on Loch Ness, and the old castle ruins and stuff were there. And so we went there, and again we were doing work, but we were just called to the water's edge. And I was like, I have to get my feet in the water. I have to get my feet in the water. So my husband's like, well, I'm walking over here to the castle, and to the ruins. And I'm like, well, I'll be over here and, put my feet in the water. We've got this apple we need to donate, So we find a little area that's near. And then what I discovered actually after we were leaving, and I don't know if I mentioned this one to you, Susan, but they had like an old well that was there, and all the bricks were there. And so right now it
Yeah, I
just looks like a
took a
dry
picture of
circle.
that well too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So right now it looks like a dry circle of bricks that like go down. But I get the sense that, intuitively, that it was that because of the location of where it was, that there were, elementals, and it had kind of like a sacred energy about it. But again, we were just in the moment and enjoying what we were doing. But there were a lot of rocks that were there that were very like, pokey. So I took my shoes off and I thought, ow, 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 ow.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we all brought like water shoes
Water shoes, did we
on the
have them?
trip, but
No,
did not
didn't have
bring them
them.
on this day tour, this Scottish Highlands, bus tour.
Oh
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
It
But
sounds amazing. I bet the elementals really were playful there, for sure.
it was a lot of fun. We at the at each different location, and we had this conversation, and we were setting a lot of our intentions even before we got there, that that we wanted to connect, that we wanted to help souls, help them cross over. And so we were all feeling the energy. We were all feeling the differences that changed from like the vibration was changing. So I was getting those vibrations before the trip. And basically I used to call them effervescent bubbles. So you feel like you're like shaking, but you're not shaking, but it feels like that inside, like fizzy lifting drinks, right? And but I was waking up actually like physically shaking, and I was like, oh, okay, this is new. And then I was getting kind of these like spasms. So and that was like brand new. So before the trip, like I'd be laying there and both of my legs would be like they would just jerk. And I was like, what is happening? Like, why are my legs would be jerking, or, my left leg or my right leg or both my legs, or, or my whole body would shake like this. And I'd be like, okay, like, is anybody seeing me this, but mostly it was happening when I was laying down. So during the trip, every night I was waking up with like this intense, like shaking, sweating, and just like the heat of the energy. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we are doing so much work.
Wow.
But
If you had to compare the energy, the way it felt in Ireland, and the energy between Florida and Mount Shasta, how would you explain the three?
Scotland and Ireland was so much more intense. It just was. Here's how I can give you a visual.
They were different.
If you were, and I'm
The
just going to use
feeling
it.
of them.
Yeah, just the feeling of them. But if I were to use the visual of like the intensity of energy, if I were to say, imagine a gas stove and you turn it on and you set it at the lowest setting. The first time I went to Mount Shasta, even though there was like so much that happened and that intense clearing that happened, I think that I would set that at like a low to medium, like that kind of
I got the
range.
message that we were in seventh dimensional energies that first time in Mount Shasta,
Yeah,
because we felt like children playing, like it was such a high vibrational energy. And even though, yeah, we were going through the pandemic, everything, like
yeah,
nobody was wearing masks, everybody was like embracing each other with love. It just was very freeing. And yeah, we were just laughing and
yeah,
playing, and it was yeah, beautiful blue skies, wonderful energy. And I did have the experience like Wendy had mentioned, where once we came back to where we live, like it felt so much denser, and like, yeah, like we were
Yeah, that
anchoring in the
heaviness.
light codes, like we brought that energy, I think, back with us
Hmm.
and anchored it in where we were, because and to help transmute, yeah, like we, like she said, we're transformers, transmuters, where we bring in that higher vibrational energy and anchor it in
Yeah.
to Gaia. And another thing we did in Florida that just came to mind was that we were doing like crystal grids on the beach
Yeah.
with our crystal skulls and other crystals. We did like a kind of a grid pattern, and we did light language and did intentions for like when you mentioned, for souls that had died at sea. And then later we channeled like I think when that night when we got back to the hotel, that there was literally like 1,000 souls that we helped cross over or something by that work that we did, was the message that
Well,
we
I
got.
mean,
Or maybe
that's
it was
another
after we
thing
got
too.
home.
That's
Yeah.
another thing too. It's part of clearing the land is clearing it of lost souls and helping them
Right.
move to the light. That's a big, huge part of it. And I don't think people know that. And also, once you
Ancestral lineages and
Hmm.
ancestral clearing. Yep.
Yep. And also stagnant energy. So, like if there was a war or something happened there where it was
Yep.
really intense, then that energy needs to be released to the light. And those are sort of some of the things that you have to do when you're doing land clearing and ocean. Even the ocean, because the ocean carries emotion and all kinds of.
Mhm. Oh yeah, the water holds memory. So I mean, anybody who has, and I wish I had this guy's name at the top of my head, but people are aware of it. Where they did the studies on water to see like what's the difference of if you
Yeah.
play, you know,
Emoto.
Yes.
What was this? I
yeah,
Something.
can't
yeah.
remember his
That
first name.
they look at the study of water and how it affects differently for different sounds, or if you put the water on, negative words versus positive words, and then you see, and you could freeze it, and then you see like, the negative words are like cloudy and yicky looking, and the ones that have like love intention to them, the water and the ice will be like a crystal clear, beautiful ice cube. So, but the water definitely holds memory. And that's one of the things too, both times actually when we were in Mount Shasta, we had done kind of a cleansing the people, not quite a baptism, but it was kind of like that kind of an intention the first time. Now, when I brought a group out the second time, it was kind of like, hey, I just want to do like a share heart. So whoever wants to come, show up, and we'll get together and we'll go do land clearing. And so we ended up doing a water ceremony. And then we went out to the Peace Garden, and then we did a goddess ceremony out there
The
where,
headwaters and
yeah,
connected with the earth
mhm.
dragons.
And then we were at the headwaters and did light language and singing there, and met the earth dragon Andaris there. And that was, he said that his work is that, in case people are like, what's an earth dragon? What do they do? Well, his work is actually at the base of the headwaters, and he helps the energy of the water clearing as it filtrates through the mountain, coming down to the headwaters. So,
The headwaters of the Sacramento River. It's
yeah, the
it's in the
Sacramento River.
city park at Mount Shasta, yeah. Or
Yeah,
at the city of Mount Shasta.
so that was interesting. And then we ended up, while we were doing our ceremony with the water, singing the water song. Um,
Yeah,
there was
at
another group.
Castle Lake, we did drumming. Yeah, did the water
Yeah,
song, did some like the Strong Woman song and some other Native American songs there.
yeah. But when we started getting ready to do the water song, to do the healing and clearing, there was another group, and there were about, I don't know, 6 women maybe that came over and ended up joining us. So we ended up having this like circle of 20 with the women all just like they just joined us in this like ceremony. They wanted to be a part. And so
Beautiful.
when the light is there, people are like, they sense it and they're attracted to it, you know.
And they were part of a spiritual retreat group that just happened
Right,
to be there at the same at the lake at the same time we were. So it's kind of
right.
amazing.
Yeah. So, back to the energy part of it, if you
But yeah,
compare
so the
that.
energy, yes, so the energy in Florida, I would say, was probably not as high as the Shasta, where I said the Shasta the first time we were there was like, like low to medium. But I think our initial clearing work that we were joining, like with the group that came and the attendees, also it hadn't snowed there. There was no snow on the mountain. and we brought snow, we brought rain, we brought snow. And now people will send me photos, and it's like seems like there's always snow there, so that's exciting and fun.
That's
But
great.
I was getting message from my spirit team to say we need snow, like it has to have snow. So I think that has to do with like also kind of like cover for the Telosians. So if you get any contact or connection with that, or if you're familiar with Lemuria, then you know that that's kind of it's a tie-in. The Telosians are like the current Lemurians, the survivors, if you will.
Mhm.
And
But
so
see, what I think, like when you were talking about over there in Ireland, that it was really more and more
it
intense.
was so much more
But if you
intense.
think
Yeah.
So
about it, that's where the
it
heart.
It
went.
was very, it
I
felt
would say
very
it was
Well,
dense,
leaning into
very
high
dense in
flames.
let me say
Ireland,
this.
very
That is
heavy.
where the heart chakra is over there in England and in that area, the
Hmm.
mother's
Yeah.
chakra.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
could see why it would be so intense.
plus
Oh,
the
we haven't
ancient.
talked about Rosslyn Chapel either.
Yeah. So we ended up spending more time after we came back from Loch Ness. We had the ride back, dinner, and yada yada. And then the next day, we had planned on meeting one of my friends that I met at the Crystal Skull Conference, Jerry McNeil, and then also Phil Barrow, who Jerry's he's works with the Skull Mystic, Highland Mystic, and then he also does poetry. And then also Philip Barrow, he does, he's Archangel Raphael is his connection, and he is, a very strong and intense healer. And he works with another group, and they have a lot of times like free healing that they'll do with Heal Teach Love.
Yeah, they do healing
But
events. Yeah.
yeah, but like,
Beautiful.
yeah, so they came and they met with us. So all of us were at Roslyn Chapel. So we
And
were,
so
out.
Sophie Angels to
Yeah,
Angels
Sophie Angels
I
and
love
Angels.
was with
Sophie.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they drove up like 4 hours from the UK to Scotland to meet us at Rosslyn Chapel,
Yeah.
That's so
which is
sweet.
like outside of like half hour outside of
So what
Edinburgh.
happened when you got to the chapel? What kind of ceremony did you?
Oh,
It
so
was intense.
while we were there, the energies were intense. They felt very heavy. And so but we were having fun. So we were just clearing and being in our childlike joy. But then we ended up going, like we were kind of healing the buildings because the buildings had some kind of energy to them. And they had like some, like, I don't know, like
It almost looked like
symbolics that were kind of,
Freemasonry symbols,
yeah,
like carved
like
into the
carved
stone of the
into it, and you could
building.
like feel it. And Phil has a lot of he's got the ability to like kind of like instantaneously astral travel. So he was getting images of like old wars and that were going on there. And he's like, yeah, not so great. So anyway, so we ended up like clearing the land like from on top. And then we went down into the basement of
That
the chapel.
which was the
So
crypt.
correct. Mhm.
But
And so we
yeah,
were
it looked
down
like
there.
almost an underground chapel, but it had a beautiful stained glass window letting light in. But you had to go down some steep stone steps to get down there. And then there was alcoves like in the wall of this little kind of chapel room, and there was a little small room off of it. But we were spreading seed crystals around the whole perimeter.
And doing blessings and bringing
Yeah.
in the violet flame and
Yeah, we
the
joined
platinum
hands, our
ray.
whole group. Yeah, we joined hands, did light language, did clearing, and like I was getting like multiple zaps, like 13, 15 zaps in the arch of my right foot, and I think Wendy was getting all sorts of sensations as well.
Yeah, there was a
And
lot of energy kind of pushing up and around us.
yeah,
And so we were holding hands, and while we were holding hands, we were, setting our intentions, doing light language, and then I kept feeling like somebody was like pulling us apart. I was like, somebody's pulling away, like trying to break our hands from each other, like somebody's pulling on us. And then I was like, but then I also was feeling our light was expanding, like because of us being like
yeah, I
holding
was kind
hands,
of intending to
kind of.
expand it outwards, yeah,
Yeah. So
to
so it was like,
encompass the area.
yeah, so it was like this feeling like you're being pulled apart, but also feeling like the expansion. So anyway, so we got done there, and then I think we did a group photo, a couple of them while we were there, and then we went upstairs. And then after we were upstairs, um, Jerry and Phil were kind of in the corner, and I hadn't really explored or looked at anything in the upstairs part of the chapel, but I kind of like was like getting ready to leave, and then I had of like a ledge there, and I'm like sitting there. Well, then this lady comes over, she's like, that's kind of a burial spot, and it's probably not like really like, the best spot to be sitting. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I hadn't really realized. And then Jerry and Phil told me, they go, yeah, this is said, it's purported to be that this is Merlin's tomb. And I was like, oh my
Wow,
God,
that was cool.
because Merlin is an aspect of me, which means also the Saint Germain connection, which makes, all of that kind of like it ties in. But we're all fractals of the one source, right? The one light. And we have just variations of different lives that we've led. And then also, as you come into this life, you come in with your team, and then as you reach a certain age, your team will shift out. So you won't always have your same light team. For anybody who's like, oh, I don't know what the heck they're talking about. But you won't always have your same light team. And then certain times you'll progress to a certain level, and then it'll be like, okay, like, now you're going to get this next angel, because I've taught you what you need to know, I've guided you, and now we're going to swap, because now where you're at now you need this person to start guiding you, or this ascended master. And so I sometimes, if you ever find yourself like attracted to like reading about certain ascended masters, or like learning more about them, usually that's kind of them like putting it on your heart to connect with them, and then you can start to get those learnings and teachings that that they're trying to direct you with. So, but Jerry also had that connection with Merlin, and Phil does as well. So,
But one thing that people don't understand is that it only takes 3 ounces to animate our bodies with spirit. And so there's many people who has an aspect of Merlin. There's many people who has an aspect of all the angels, and
different angels and Metatron and various angels, not just one. So
so I mean, it's really cool because you girls, I have aspects of everything you guys been saying. So I was like, wow.
Well, as we've gone along our journey,
we've learned,
like at this point, it doesn't even matter all the labels of like you're this or that. Like you're just the totality of your authentic self. Like it doesn't, like we don't feel the need to go, usually to say, oh, I'm this aspect or this fractal, or and it's just you just think of it like they're, these different beings are lending their essence, their energy for our mission or journey, whatever. And so we're all connected, all all one. We're just different. I know one of the members of our group said we're all part of the God soup, which I think is a good explanation, that that we have many different concurrent lifetimes that we've learned about, and things like that, that's in different dimensions. And the more we've explored, like we're having these multi-dimensional experiences where like we're losing time, and like we're like, where was I for the last like 10 minutes, like, or falling asleep at the drop of a hat, and then it just feels like a split second later. Anyways, but so we can probably share some of our other mystical experiences. So when we were in Belfast, we went to the Titanic experience, and we spent 2 nights there. And the second night after the Titanic experience, we got back to our hotel later after dinner, and I wasn't feeling well, so I was laying down, and Wendy and her husband and Joan, they went up to the rooftop bar because they wanted to see what it was like up there. And so they were gone for a while, and then I was just sleeping. And then I think around 11:30, Wendy and Joan came back, and they were sitting at the small table in our room talking. And and then I think I fell back to sleep about 12:30. And then I think I received like a spam phone call from like the US that must have lit up my phone and woke me up because I had the ringer off. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll go up and visit the restroom. And I was walking by Joan's bed where she would normally be, and I looked over, and it looked like she hadn't gone to bed yet. Like it was like Wendy and Joan were gone. It looked like Wendy, it looked like Joan's bed was perfectly made with like, decorative pillows and stuff is what I saw. And I didn't, I was like, well, where are they? Did they go down to the lobby to not disturb me and they're talking or whatever? And so I went to the bathroom, went back to bed, and then the next morning I was telling Joan and Wendy about it. And Wendy's, said I left about, like 1 o'clock, right? And Joan's like, I was in bed at 2 o'clock. I was sleeping.
That's so weird.
So, and I kind of intuitively felt like she was taken on ship because she does often have very vivid dreams of being on ship, right? On different galactic ships doing different things. And I'm like, well, did they take her body on ship or was I just like in a different dimension in that moment where I didn't see her sleeping there? Who knows?
Who
So
knows? It could have been any of that. Any of
yeah,
that.
and then when we got to Dublin later towards the end of our trip, um Joan and I, the first night that we were there, we spent 2 nights there, but the first night, um, we were both sleeping and I was fast asleep and she woke up like around like 4 or 5 a.m. again. And there was this shelving unit in the left-hand corner of our room, that our beds were facing, right? And at the top shelf there was like an extra pillow, and then the shelf below it there was some blankets or whatever. And she saw 4 leprechauns kind of in the dim light of the room, but she saw them moving and she saw their kind of like pointed hats, even though it's kind of, like I think like what similar to the gnomes where it's kind of like the lip of the hat is kind of flipped over. So kind of
Uh-huh.
like a, hat, but then kind of pointed and kind of, or maybe tilted. But she saw like kind of the pointed chin, like they have more of a narrow face than
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the gnomes, and it's a more of a pointed chin. So she saw that. Um, and she kind of, saw their pants or outfits kind of, but she saw that one of them was like dangling its legs kind of over the top, like they were laying or sitting on that top shelf. And so she kind of just sat still, just like in awe, watching them, like, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Like, because she was kind of afraid, like, oh, if I move, like this vision will disappear, right?
Right, right.
And so she just laid there for, yeah, like 5 minutes or more. And it looked like they were just like watching us. Um, and I think later what we got was that through like we were doing our channeling practice after we got home, and one of the gals in our group said, well, they were like with you the whole time and you were like in another dimension pretty much the whole trip with them.
So
Because it was interesting, like
it,
what.
it, it explains the different layers and how
And the
we are
weather was like
personally ascending.
perfect. I mean, the
Yeah.
like I did intentions, Wendy did intentions before we left for the weather to be beautiful. And if it needed to rain, it would be when like we were indoors or didn't, it wasn't a problem. And it worked out that way where it was like high 70s, like 78, 79, 80. Um, every day, beautiful sunny blue skies, green grass, just perfect weather. And the only time it rained was, so we spent 3 days in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And on the fourth day is when we flew from Scotland to Dublin, Ireland. And then we got a rental car and we drove around Ireland, or Bob did, Wendy's husband. And the day we flew, from Scotland to Ireland, it like was lightly raining, but then it cleared up when we got there and we were driving, on our trip, and later the sun came out and everything on our way driving up to Belfast. And then it was beautiful and sunny weather the whole trip. And then when we got into Dublin, our last full day, and because we spent 2 nights in Dublin, um, it was raining and we decided, and then the day we flew out, it was also raining. So, but that last day we went to Dublin Castle. It was a Friday. Um, and we got there and then I was about to walk up the velvet stairs and I kind of felt trepidation, like I like, like a heavy sinking feeling. Like I
I
didn't
felt
want
that.
to.
I felt that energy
Yeah,
too.
and she
I
felt that
remember
too.
feeling like off. Like I just felt off. Like that whole like when I
Yeah.
first got back from
Like I
Shasta,
don't
and I
want to
was
go
like
up there. Yeah.
weird, right?
And the thing is, Dublin Castle has been the seat of the Irish government for 1,000 years. So there's been a lot of stuff going on there.
Mhm.
And so I quickly felt like an upset stomach going on. So I ran upstairs, told Wendy and Joan, like, I'll be in the restroom for a while. And so yeah, I was in the restroom for like 2 hours with the worst food poisoning I've ever experienced in my life. Thought
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
gonna die. Anyways, they thought they
2
might have to
hours.
bring me to the
I
hospital.
mean, I was walking around looking and saying, "Do you guys have a medical kit, or do you have somebody like if we need to call somebody to come rescue her?" Because I'm like, I don't know if she's coming out of there.
Yeah, I
You
didn't
know,
know
it
if
was
I was
really
coming out of there.
intense.
At one point, I thought, well, maybe I do need to go to the hospital. But yeah, they found out where the nearest pharmacy was. They ran and got me some stuff to help me. And by the time they got back, like I was feeling like I could like leave and
But
go
you know
back to the
what, though?
hotel.
I mean, people don't really talk about that stuff, but
But it
you
was a
have
huge
physical,
purging, right? And
right,
I feel
physical
like I
reactions.
collected a lot of dense energy, or I mean, I do have some Irish heritage, so I feel like I don't know if ancestral clearing or just in general, yeah, throughout Ireland it felt more dense than Scotland. Like Scotland felt a little more lighthearted, playful, fun. Like everywhere you went, they were playing like this awesome, American like 80s, 90s music,
Oh my
like that
gosh.
we hadn't heard it. And we went out dancing one night us girls and
The
had a
place
ton of
called the Three Sisters.
yeah. And we had a ton of fun. Like the
That was
first
fun.
night in Edinburgh. And yeah, so yeah, it was just a very more lighthearted like in Scotland. And then yeah, it just felt a little more dense and heavy in Ireland a bit. And yeah, so I kind of feel like we were collecting energy. Um, and then it's like when we went to Dublin Castle and we were kind of debating about whether to go that day. Like, well, should we go to Dublin Castle? Should we go somewhere else? And we decided to go, and then that happened.
Well, see,
If
But I
we
felt
had
people
like
get,
been on
it was a
any of the
huge
other
purging
things,
of energy. Yeah.
you would
yeah,
we would have been dumped off somewhere. I mean, because
yeah.
we wouldn't have left her. We would have been like, we need to stop. We need to get out and find, a washroom or something. And
Yeah.
that would have been the extent of that.
So
But you know
I
what?
went back to the hotel, spent yeah, the rest of the night in bed, and then they went out to dinner because we had reservations where they had Irish dancers and music, and we got to see them a little bit the night before,
The
but
clogging.
the kitchen was closed, so we couldn't eat, so we made a reservation for like 7:30, because all the kitchens in Ireland and
Closed
Scotland
early,
close at
yeah.
like 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it
Everything
stays
closes
light out
early.
till 10:30 because it's so far north. Anyways, um, yeah, so luckily the next day when we flew back, our flight was delayed by like 2.5 hours, I think, and which is perfect. And things were stable for me to fly home, so I didn't have any issue. But took a couple days off of work, stayed home. It took like about a week to kind of recover, but I was like sleeping, after we got back,
What an
and
amazing
for
trip
for
for you
like
guys.
almost 2 weeks. But I felt so tremendous. I mean, I had lost like 8 pounds, I think, since before I left, but I just felt energetically lighter. I felt just happier, more joyful, more at
Yeah.
peace. Just the
Good.
difference was like amazing. And when
Wow.
I'd go out in
Now,
nature, I felt like I was connecting to nature, like I was feeling the energy of nature more strongly. And so yeah, so I feel like I needed to
Purge.
like purge and
yeah.
clear all that energy in Ireland at the seat of the Irish government and be like a transformer like we are,
Exactly.
and clear that energy. And I feel like was the purpose.
Yeah, for
But yeah,
sure.
so I
Not,
appreciate it
not
now that it
everybody
happened,
talks
but
about the
yeah,
physical reactions to that work, but we
Oh my
all
God,
keep
so
clearing it. We
intense.
all, because it hits our nervous system, and whatever happens, happens, and whatever you got in your body that really shouldn't be there, it's
yeah.
gonna go somewhere.
Gotta
So
go.
I know we just don't
You
talk
gotta
about
let
that,
go
but
of the
you know
old
what?
to let in the new, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
You got to learn just go with the flow. But
exactly.
we've already been on for an hour, so I just wanted
Wow.
to know. I know that went fast, didn't it? So I just wanted to see if you guys wanted to do a little bit of light language to maybe bring in the keys and codes from all these places you've come from, and to maybe integrate it and help others heal in this place. And when we're all done, when it gets uploaded, they will put in the comments where you can get a hold of them if you want a personal session. And so, yeah, so you guys go ahead and begin whatever it is you want to do before we
Sounds
wrap
good.
this
I,
up.
you know, I blew my computer out because when I was talking, all of a sudden I got this heat rush, and then I was talking with my hands, and so I was sending it out. So when
why
I
she popped in and
disappear, you
out.
guys that feel energy, you know, feel into like what was coming at you. And right now I've got Kundalini energy moving in my back. So I don't know if you've ever experienced that, where you can actually feel it like waving. So, so it's fun. But like, I can remember the first time that I experienced that. So I had my Kundalini awakening years earlier, but this last year, last summer, it was like really intense, like from my hip all the way up to my spine. Like it just would stop at the top of my neck. And it was just like, I literally felt it going up and going down, going up and going down, like all summer long. And I was like, I didn't really understand that I could feel that energy like that and that intensity. And I was like, what is happening right now?
So cool.
But that was, you know, that was last summer equinox when that was happening.
Mhm.
But anyway, yeah, let me do some light language, and hopefully you'll get like this energetic feel. Atahuiana narata I chikriera ma atatuira tahi kakatuira pa atati ni tutuira na akai nyoro tuira tahi na kai na tuira tuira na ka apahi jujuira na ite tutuira na takaira ta. So I channeled multiple. I'm hearing them come in, so I stopped. Whoever was just coming through is more of like fairy energy, but sometimes I'll start with one being, and then they'll kind of alternate, and they'll just like pop in and out. So if you hear my sound changing, that's what's happening. Sorry, I stopped you. Dragons are here with you as well. That was Jade. She's an earth dragon, but she's Jade of the Sea is her name, Jade of the Sea. And she's right where the water meets the land. And I met her at the Giant's Causeway. There's leprechaun energy. Have fun, have fun, have fun. Okay, I get this information like this packs of energy, so I'm just gonna tap into like what I was hearing from the earlier stuff. And then I thought, okay, they're like, I can feel and their energy's all trying to come out at once. So I was like kind of letting them get each a little bit. So the first energy was angelic energy coming through to you to let you know that yes, the angels are here with you, they're guiding you. And of course we will assist you with whatever you need assisting with whenever you are asking. Just ask, and our presence will be there to help. Believe is the second part of the asking. Believe. Trust. Trust is the next stage of the learning. Trust. And the fairies just wanted to bring that joyful fun and joy, just to let you know that, yes, they were along on the trip as well. We found ourselves connecting in with the flowers. So this is me talking, not the translation, connecting in with the flowers of the land while we were there. And so they just wanted to kind of pop through and just give you that little like, hey, hello, you know, sending love and thanking us and you for when you take the time for connecting in with flowers and plants and the beauty of nature. And then the leprechauns were just wanting to let you know, us three specifically, that they were playing with us earlier, and so they enjoyed it and they enjoyed it and found it humorous that we were trying multiple different methodologies to try to connect our technology, but they also knew that the energy, frankly, was just too high. So I know that I was like calling in Archangel Michael after all of that, and I was when we couldn't connect, I was like, please please clear our technology. And then I don't know, whatever I was talking about earlier, when it just zapped out again, I was like, oh geez, here we go. Round two. But yeah, that was the
Beautiful.
extent of what I got. But thank you guys for listening, and
Thank you.
I hope you really just experience the celebration of life. Like, this is just me to you. That I enjoy working with those who, you know, want to come and work with me. And if you're experiencing those blocks and that sort of thing, and you're just like, I don't know what to do, I'm stuck. That's really my forte. So yeah, please feel free to reach out to me, and light language blessings to you.
Right. Susan, would you like to do a little
Wonderful.
bit of light language?
Yes. Yeah, I've been asking for any positive beings to come through, but specifically I was asking for the leprechauns as well. And I was yawning when when Wendy was channeling them and the dragons and everything. And which often happens, like when we're in channeling with one another, like if she's bringing someone in, I'll be yawning, or vice versa. It's just a way of clearing energies. So anyways, all right, so we'll see who would like to come through.
And connecting. Sometimes that's that merger that's happening too, I discovered.
Yes. Te sikoa he te aiti ko te hiaisia ko to hia i sikatia i to to aia sikatoa hi te akua i te tia ko to i si hi sikaya to ya sikita i sikuto hazia ia ko ta i te ia o ko to ya ia siki ia to i siki to ko i te hia i ko hi sikia. Yes, this is Torkelson the leprechaun sukota ia sukoto ia i ko i te tia i te ai ko ta i si. Hosekaya toya yesikita tuku suku. Thank you for calling us forth. Sikitia hiesikotoya itu tuku tugaya he to participate in your gathering. Sikaya tua he tia okutuya hiesikaya ua sikitia yitu. We are greatly honored. Sikutai hiesikia by this work that you are doing and have been doing. Hiesikia utuya in our homeland. Sikaya tua yesiki. Your energies have had a great effect in clearing our environments. We express our great gratitude in this. We extend an activation to clear and heal you. Sikaya hi tukoya sikia yoko sia tiko intend to accept if you wish. Sukoya ita hazia koya ita yukoya tukuta yete ayokutua yetsikita yiki kokoa yetitia hazia o kite ayukua hitia ikia kokoa yetia yeti tukutua yetikiti tikutoya yesikaya tua yetia yetiki tiki 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 tsukua yetia kutoa tita i kua he sia wo ke ai te ia sku wa ia te ia ki to i te ia sku ha sia te ia ki a o ka i te tita i sku ai to hi te hi sia i ke te a hu ia siki hi so te ke a tuku magic be showered upon you sku ai te Kia sia yuku ya tia yokutu. Kia sia yutuku ya you call upon us to bring greater magic into your lives. Sikua etia uku hia sia kutuia ye kutua kia kua hia sikua tia or any other assistance you may need. Sikuia iti tuku tia hikia itukua itukua papa ya itia itukua hia sikia yotu yetia ukua itukitira hia sikua itu hihaya itia yokototoia ya sikita.
I'm,
That's
I think the
tickly
baby
energy.
dragons were
There's
maybe
other-
coming in,
Yeah, beautiful.
coming in towards the end, but
I-
yeah.
I started getting those spasms again after they started saying, get your magic. And all of a sudden my hip started like jerking again. I was like, oh my God, here we go. So it was making me laugh.
So beautiful. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of light language to help everyone. I'm going to ask my guides for whatever keys and codes they need for whatever their journey is in this now moment, and just see what happens. And then after that, we're going to close it up, and until next time. Ikira itere emiotro or picatara itere ist miatra ite emiatra otro or picatara asht it ike amokoro pica any atra. So this is kind of a love blessing to everyone. So you all have a blessed evening, and thank you for listening to us and listening to all their beautiful adventures. Until next time, love you all.
Much love to you all.
Much
Blessings.
love. Namaste.